The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello and welcome to another Best in the World with Richard Parr, and I'm talking to you from South Africa, Cape Town to be exact, where I'm currently here filming for my sports breakfast show, Sportacino. Check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/Sportacino. Been covering all types of amazing different sports while I've been here. I've been to see the T20 International between South Africa and Sri Lanka last week at Newlands. I've been to the horse racing event, the Sun Met, at Kenilworth. There's so much going on in this amazing sports city. Please go and check out some of the videos because we've been able to speak to some fantastic guests. Speaking about fantastic guests, I've got a great guest for you today on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. I'm talking to the world champion swimmer, Robbie Renwick. He is also a keen kite surfer, so we talk about how he started up a business for that. He talks about how he raced against Michael Phelps, and also we go into good details about goal setting, which is seemingly important to every single sports star we speak to on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. And he also describes in detail some of the lifestyle changes he made to help him become a world champion swimmer. Really good advice, really interesting chat with Robbie Renwick on today's Best in the World podcast. That's all coming up in just a moment, but I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is one of the leading suppliers of audiobooks in the world. You can try out their product by using the code audibletrial.com/best. That's audibletrial.com/best, and you can check out their service for 30 days, and that includes a free audio book download. So, free stuff. We all appreciate that, especially when it's great learning that you can get from an audiobook courtesy of Audible. Why don't you give it a go and let me know how you get on? Send me a tweet at Richard_Parr. All right, let's get into the interview with the world champion swimmer, Robbie Renwick.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Robbie Renwick, world champion swimmer, welcome to the Best in the World. Now we're going to talk about all things to do with your amazing career, particularly in the pool, swimming, your routine, your whole life. But I first wanted to talk about something else that you get up to, and that's about kite surfing. Now you've got a company related to this. Do you want to tell us a bit about this and where this passion comes from?
Yeah, so I run a kite surf school called Try Kite-surfing. And kite surfing has always been my passion away from swimming. I always found that I would have to have something in my life that I look forward to in the weekend. So kite surfing was that. When I was training 6 days a week, my brain would be constantly thinking about swimming all the time. So kite surfing was really a really good release for me. The brilliant thing about kite surfing is it's the ultimate freedom of the ocean. You can go anywhere, and you have the added dynamic of being able to jump and being able to fly up to 30, 40 foot in the air, which is just incredible. And it's that rush of adrenaline that I really crave.
Now, I'm from the south of England. I'm down in Brighton, where it's a lot warmer than where you are in Scotland, but it's still pretty cold down here. Is it not freezing to be doing that up where you are?
Yeah, it's absolutely Baltic. I have to invest in the best wetsuits money can buy, 5mm neoprene, boots, gloves, hood, and it's still quite cold. But once you're moving around in the water, you're not too bad at all. Last weekend I was teaching maybe 6 or 7 hours, and it was only 5 degrees outside, and that, trust me, was very, very cold.
Oh. No, thanks. That one's not for me, Robbie. But when you're doing this, do your coaches ever get concerned? Like, what are the risk of injury in something like kite surfing? Is there any time it's ever affected your swimming?
No, actually, kite surfing is very, very safe. I mean, especially the way we teach it, it can be a very dangerous sport if you're out of control of the kite. It's a big, powerful beast, but the way we teach it, we really try emphasize the safety element. Whenever you're feeling uncomfortable, the bottom line is you don't go out and kite surf. So as long as you follow the right safety procedures, you're 100% safe. It's when you're being careless, you're being reckless, you haven't got lessons, you don't quite understand what you're doing. That's when accidents can happen. And for me, I've never hurt myself kite surfing, touch wood. But at the same time, I do recognise that my coaches probably the lead up to the Olympics would prefer that I wouldn't go kite surfing just in case. But I am a very, very careful person, and it's almost like I take calculated risk. I'm not reckless at any point. I'm making sure I'm doing the safety parts of kite surfing very, very well.
Okay, well, let's talk a bit more about swimming. And in fact, let's talk about your early life. Now, I've got here that you actually born in Abu Dhabi. I know that region quite well. I've been in Qatar for 6 years of my life working for Al Jazeera. Were you in Abu Dhabi long before you returned to Scotland? And if so, how was your experience there?
No, I wasn't actually. I can barely remember anything about Aberdeen. So basically, I was an oil baby. My dad worked in the oil industry, so that's why we lived in Abu Dhabi at the time. 6 months later, I moved to Aberdeen, where I lived there for 20 years. So all my memories, all my swimming is come from Aberdeen. I was just merely born there as an expat child. So yeah, I have very, very faint memories of what Abu Dhabi was like, but yeah, it's an interesting one being born there.
Yeah, I'm sure your parents kind of missed the heat when they returned. So you're in Aberdeen. So when did you start swimming, and then when did you realise that you were good at swimming, and when did you realise that I want to take this seriously?
Yeah, so I started swimming, just learned to swim lessons at around about 5 years old. For me, I always love being in the water and around the water, hence the kite surfing as well. I always find when I'm not swimming, I want to be around the sea or, still messing around in a river, stand-up paddleboarding kind of thing. That's really my passion, being surrounded by water. I love it. So from the age of about 5, like all my friends swam. So it was just a natural thing to do, to learn to swim, then progress and join a swim club and just progress through the ranks. Now, I've been very, very lucky to have brilliant coaches throughout my swimming career, and they've played a huge part of developing me as a swimmer, and I've always had a very, very supportive family as well. So that's been the backbone of everything, which has just been fantastic. And at the age of 16, I actually qualified for the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne 2006. So at 17, I competed at the Commonwealth Games and I came away with a silver medal in the men's 4x200 relay. At that point, I knew I could pursue swimming as a career. That was a real kind of changing point in my life. I could go, you know what, the Olympics is only 2 years away and it's not that much higher than the level I'm at now. So that was the point where realization kicked in and I realized I could pursue being a sportsman professionally.
And in 2008, was that was your first Olympic appearance at Beijing? Am I right? And how was that experience for you?
Yeah, Beijing was absolutely incredible. For me to compete at an Olympic Games as a youngster, the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games and the World Championships were always the pinnacle of sport for me. So when I qualified for my first Olympic Games, it was probably one of the proudest moments in my swimming career. It was the lead up of everything I ever wanted in a competition. And I went into the Beijing Olympics with no pressure, nothing at all. And I actually made an individual final on the men's 200 freestyle. And I was swimming next to Michael Phelps, who was on his way to winning 8 gold medals. So for me, I was totally in awe. I was this magical age of 19 years old where you're just absolutely fearless. Every time you race, you're swimming PBs, you're really racing with confidence, and it's a really amazing time. Every time you're racing, you're getting faster and faster. And for me to unexpectedly make the Olympic final in the men's 200 freestyle, was absolutely phenomenal.
Were you nervous that day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can actually barely remember it because when I walk out before the race, everything just becomes automatic. The race turns into a blur. It's almost like your brain is working in overdrive. So I can see myself on YouTube swimming that final, and I can barely remember any of it. It was a very nerve-wracking experience, but at the same time, I had this attitude of going in with nothing to lose, and it's that attitude which you're able to make such huge gains. It's when you get into your senior career, you have a lot to lose. You have the potential to lose all your funding, whether you pay a mortgage or you have a family, your race depends on that. So when you're at that age of 19 and not having anything to lose, it's a really magical time in your career. You can just swim with no stress, no baggage on you. And most of the time you're performing really, really well as well.
So when it came to the London Games 4 years later, when you've had this experience of being in Beijing, you've been able to do it kind of pressure free. What then goals and targets did you set yourself for London 2012? And do you think that helped you or hindered you at all?
Yeah, for me, I was actually the British swimming team had a relatively disappointing London Olympic Games, which, being part of the swimming team I'm talking about, was a real shame. It feels like a missed opportunity. It feels like a lot of swimmers on that team could have swam a lot better, and we could have come away with a lot more medals. But for me, going into London, I knew I was never going to get an individual medal. So I then sat back with my coach and I said, right, realistically, what is a great goal here? And we decided that a great goal for me would be to make the individual final again in the men's 200 freestyle and try sneak a bronze medal. Now, I made that final in the men's 200 freestyle and I came sixth. And for me, came sixth in a PB, a personal best time, and I'd done as well as I'd hoped. And for me, I could walk away from the London Olympic Games with my head held high, knowing that I swam a PB and I had done the best I could. For me, coming sixth at the Olympic Games was almost like me winning my Olympic medal. I knew the likes of Yannick Agnel, who won that event, Ryan Lochte, Park Tae-wan. I knew these guys. I'm a realist. I knew these guys were a second or a second and a half faster, and there was nothing I could do to catch them. It comes down to physiology, and these guys had a better physiology than me. So for me, it was about getting the best out of myself. It wasn't the case of I came sick, gutted, I didn't win the gold medal. For me, my gold medal was getting in that top six.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
We'll have more from Robbie in just a moment, but I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Audible. They're one of the leading suppliers of audiobooks in the world, and I'm currently listening to Zlatan Ibrahimovic's book on Audible. I'd highly recommend it. Why don't you go and check it out? You can do it using a 30-day trial and a free download courtesy of Audible. Just go to audibletrial.com/best. That code one more time, audibletrial.com/best. Check it out. Let me know how it goes. All right, back to the conversation with Robbie Renwick.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Crucially, you have won gold medals since the World Championships in 2015 in Kazan. In the 4x200 meters freestyle. Tell us about that experience, leading up and kind of the camaraderie between you guys as a team, because, looking at some of your successes, you've had amazing success in that discipline, various silvers in the Commonwealth Games. You also got silver in this past Olympics, which we'll talk more about in a moment. But what was it about Kazan 2015 that made you the best in the world, made you world champions?
Yeah, 2015 was a brilliant summer for us, for Team GB as well. It seems like we really started to go on the up, but to bring it back a bit, the reason why 2015 was so successful is I have to take you back to 2014 after the Glasgow Commonwealth Games. Now, I had a very disappointing Commonwealth Games. I came in as reigning Commonwealth champion, and I wanted nothing more in my life than to be a homeboy Commonwealth champion again and get my gold medal back. But actually, what happened was I came fifth in the men's 200 freestyle. So for me, that was absolutely devastating. I knew I needed to change something in my life and change my swimming. So for me, I decided to move my life from Glasgow all the way to Stirling to train under new coach Stephen Tague and to train in a more performance-orientated club. So a real professional club. So gone were the days of getting up at 5 a.m. and training for 2 hours. I would now train at 7:30 in the morning. My lifestyle was a lot better, and I was actually able to address weaknesses in my life and in my technical aspects of swimming.
Let's just take a pause there, because that's really interesting what you were talking about in 2014 about what you changed. Can we just go into a bit more detail of how that day would look like? Because you know, I think we've reached a point here where we're really seeing what you did to become the best in the world. So we'd love to know, kind of just explain how that day would be. You said you just changed it from 2 hours training at 5 in the morning to a more structured day. Tell us about that day. Tell us exactly how that would go, please.
Yeah, so to go into the details of that, I used to train at a club. So in this club, there's maybe 300 members, ranging from little 1-year-old kids that can't swim, that need pool time, that need pool space, all the way up to performance athletes that are trying to compete at the Olympic Games. So there's a whole range when you have a club. Now, the club doesn't favor anyone. What the club does is try to make it fair for everyone. So in order to do that, we have to train. We used to train at 5:30 in the morning till 7:30. And the reason being is the majority of swimmers could get a training session in before they went to school, before they went to university, or before they went to work. So that's why we trained at 5:30 to 7:30. Now, naturally, that causes a big impact on your lifestyle, because suddenly you're having to get up at 4:30 in the morning. And also, not only did we have to train very early in the morning, we trained very late in the evening. So we would train from 5:30 in the morning till 7:30, and then we would train at 5 in the evening till 7 in the evening. I actually moved my lifestyle to training till 7:30 till 9:30, then 3 till 5 in the afternoon. So that allowed me a bit more time in the evening to say if I was absolutely shattered, I'd go to bed at 8 o'clock and I would sleep for 10 hours, 11 hours, and then I'd go to training and I'd feel recovered. So it was the lifestyle issue that I really addressed. Not only that, I took my foot off the gas a little bit in training. So the way we would train in Glasgow was we would train very, very tough all year round. And for me, the last 2 years being in Glasgow, I would just get the same results. So they weren't getting any faster. So I knew I had to change my training. And I changed my training by bringing the volume down a little bit more, still maintaining my fitness, but I was emphasizing a lot more on my technical aspect of my race. So my turns and my starts and my streamlining got more efficient. So therefore I was swimming faster whilst training less. So therefore my body was able to catch up and recover even better than it used to in Glasgow.
Yeah, so you were training smarter.
Training smarter, that's right. That's exactly what was happening. So in 2015 season, I had a great season. I was suddenly racing really fast mid-season. I qualified for the World Championships that year, no problem at all. And we got ourselves in a great position for that men's 4x200 relay. We had a swimmer called James Guy, who was just riding the tip of a wave. He was swimming really, really well. Earlier on in the week, he became individual world champion in the men's 200 freestyle. And we realized then we could get a medal because we knew we had James Guy. But we can't just rely on James Guy to swim and carry all of us. So basically our tactic leading into that race was we knew the Americans would be out ahead. So if we could get James Guy within range of the Americans, say 1.5 seconds behind, we knew he could win. He knew he could win. So, we had a great lead off from Daniel Wallace. I was next to dive in. I dived in and did another PB. At 27 years old, you don't come across them too often anymore. So we really pitched James Guy up in a brilliant position. He dived in with 50 meters to go. He told me he just looked at the American competitor and he started laughing underwater because he knew he had him. But for me, standing at the opposite end of the pool, watching this race unfold, I couldn't watch. I literally didn't watch. Now that I watch it back on TV, it's absolutely incredible. And to have that confidence at 20 years old to know I'm going to win a world championship title here, with 50 meters to go. And, it was a really special moment for me and for us in the men's team to be on top of the podium. And not only that, to beat USA, who are always on top of the podium. And to see Ryan Lochte's face after it was priceless. I don't think he ever thought that GB would have beaten him.
Amazing stuff there, Robbie. How did you guys celebrate?
Well, it was very difficult actually because we obviously train in all 4 different parts of the country. So, after the World Championships, it was literally 2 days later we flew home the next day. So we didn't really get the chance to celebrate. But for me, it was such a huge personal success because I'd been training so long. I've been training 20 years now, racing. And for me, I didn't have an international title. Yes, I have a Commonwealth Games gold medal, but now I have a world's title to my name. And I said in 2015, I said, any other medal that comes now is just a bonus. I'm happy I can walk away with swimming with a world title under my name.
And then you got gold in the European Games as well, and then the Rio Olympics, silver medal. How was that experience for you? Was there disappointment or was there pride in getting silver?
Yeah, so the whole experience was amazing. Again, to compete at the Olympic Games is the pinnacle of sport. And leading into the Olympic Games, we knew we were world champions the year before, so we knew we had a target on our back. For me, I underperformed. I knew the team for the men's 4x200 was really, really fast. I knew there were 6 swimmers competing for 4 spots. And in the heats of the men's 4x200, I wasn't fast enough to get through into the final team. And I knew it straight away once I finished my race. And I accepted it straight away. It was completely devastating for me not to be on that team, but I knew it was my fault. I knew my preparation leading into the games wasn't as ideal as I'd hoped. There was just a lot of little things that didn't go my way about 4 months leading into the games, which caused me to then underperform.
What were some of those things, Robbie?
So it's a very bitter pill to swallow. So just to go over a few, it's strange. It's not one standout thing that happened. There was just, in hindsight now, I can just see a lot of things that didn't go perfectly. So for me, after the Olympic trials, I moved into a brand new house. I had the stress of getting a house and moving everything in. A couple of weeks later, my girlfriend lost her job. A week later, she then broke her foot. All these little things that were just quite stressful moments in my life. And then a month later, my granddad passed away. And my granddad's from Holland. we flew the whole family out there. We were there when he passed away, and the whole scenario, everything was very, very stressful. Um, Combine that as well with a little bit of illness, a little bit of injury. Um, it was more of an accumulation effect, and I didn't realize how affected I was from everything until the real games. And I'm a firm believer that everyone only has so much mental space in their head. And for me, I had reached that capacity before I got to Rio. And it was almost the 2 days before my race, I was really, really stressed out. And I had no idea why. Suddenly I got really, really anxious that, I had to race in 2 days, and I wasn't sleeping the night before. And I just think all these little bits were just sapping my energy just slightly. And therefore I didn't perform to my best. And it's in hindsight now that I realize this. And it's not to make excuses and to point the finger at that. That's the reason why I didn't swim fast. It was an accumulation effect that I wasn't quite in the right mental space before my race. I was mentally, I had so much going on in my head that I didn't even realize until after my race. And by then it's too late.
With all of that anxiety and lack of sleep, was there anyone in Team GB that you could turn to? Were there psychologists on hand? Were there anyone you could speak to? Or like you say, you just didn't kind of realize it at the time?
Yeah, I think it's that. I didn't quite realize it at the time. I thought I was fine. Like here's a good example. Like the month before Rio Games, I entered a competition and I swam terrible at that competition. And instead of going, like, looking at why I swam terrible, I just assumed that the reason why I swam terrible was because I'd been training very hard, and it was actually okay because I was in heavy training. That's the reason why I didn't swim that well. But actually, the reason was I had just come back from a funeral the week before. My head was all over the place. Emotionally, I needed to recover. And then I went into a competition and I didn't swim well. I should have taken that competition as a red flag. I should have been able to address it there and then, and tried to look forward into the Rio Games with slightly more of a clear head. But for me, I took it as, that's okay right now because I know I'm training hard. So I kind of excused all these thoughts and feelings into me just going through the roller coaster of, yes, it's a Rio Olympic Games. Yes, we were world champions last year. Yes, we want to get a medal this year again. And almost ignoring everything else in my head that had been happening for the last 4 months.
I guess when you're training so hard and you've got such goals to go for, it's hard to kind of get that clear mind to actually realize and recognize these things. Do you then actually quite appreciate the time now, these few months after an Olympics? And have you looked back on during this time before the 2008 games, at the 2012 games? Is this kind of an actual quite good time, even though you're not competing, you're able to continue to learn about yourself in this period?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, right now I've not touched the water in 12 weeks since my race almost, and it's the first time I've ever given myself a break in the last 20 years. It's the first time, I can gather my thoughts and emotions together, because the lead up to an Olympic Games, it's constantly in your mind 24/7. And for me, it was a great release to go out kite surfing and, just forget about everything, forget all the worries. And I'd come back feeling a lot better. But 6 months leading into the Olympic Games, I didn't even get to kite surf, and I wasn't able to do things that I love to do. So, it's after an Olympic Games, it's almost like a huge come down. Your body has to reset, it has to readjust, because you've been training for that for 4 years. So, having this time now, 12 weeks out, it's been incredible. The stuff I've learned about myself, and the stuff I find like, actually, I really enjoy going mountain biking, for example. So I've started doing that again. It's a lot of things, like relationships with friends. It's a lot of things over the years I've missed out on, little things here and there. And it's about mending those relationships, Sport has given me so much. At the same time, it's asked for a lot of sacrifice.
So when you appreciate this time now, and the difficulties that it can be going into an Olympic cycle, albeit with the great successes and achievements that you've had, does it put you off trying to do another 4 years? Will you be going for Tokyo in 2020?
I think it's unrealistic to think I'll be going for another 4 years. For me, it's the start of another cycle, and for me, it's been so great to have some time off away from the sport and properly get away from the sport. And now I'm looking at other aspects in life. Although I talk about the disappointment in Rio, but it was very bittersweet. I came away with an Olympic silver medal. I was part of that team. I was part of the heats. I just wasn't part of the final. And for me, there is life after swimming. I know it. And I need to prepare myself. So I'm in that transition phase now where I'm working on aspects of my life that I can do now with time off, where I can't do when I'm training full time. So I've started working with Scottish Swimming and working on swimming projects, trying to increase membership, trying to increase people to pick up swimming. So it's these other areas in my life now I'm now looking into, and it's almost like swimming has taken the back foot. I'm 28 now. I have an Olympic Games gold medal. I have every major title medal now. Olympic Games, a World Championships, Commonwealth Games, and a European medal now. So if I'm going to go back into swimming, it would almost be like trying to achieve something I've already done. Now, do I put my life on hold for another 4 years or another 2 years or another year? Or do I get out into the wide open world and get a job? So that's the tough question.
I guess that's the beauty of this time now, and I tell you what, Robbie, we'll continue to follow your journey, and I'm sure whatever you do next, you'll be just as successful because of all the skills and tools that you've learnt throughout the last 20 years swimming. It's been so good to talk to you. Just before we go, Robbie, maybe you can let our listeners know your social media handles on Twitter, Instagram, all of that, so we can continue to learn from you and continue to see what you get up to in the next step in your life and career.
Yeah, thanks very much, Richard. My Twitter handle is just Robbie Renwick. Fire me some tweets, anything to do with sport and swimming, and I'm usually retweeting, and I'm not the most active tweeter, but now and again I like to tweet. So yeah, give me a follow. I would love to hear from you.
Wonderful. Robbie Renwick, thank you for being on today's podcast, and thank you for being the best in the world.
Thanks very much, Richard.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
So that's it for another Best in the World with Richard Parr. Thank you again to Robbie Renwick for being on today's show. We've got so many great guests lined up for you on the podcast, so stay tuned to iTunes and to Stitcher. We come out every single Wednesday. If you haven't subscribed to either already, please go and do so. Also, give us a rating and review. Plus, the whole back catalogue is on those sites, as well as richardparr.net. And you can listen to other swimmers give their amazing insights, such as Natalie Coughlin, such as Nick Gillingham. We've had so many fantastic guests on the Best in the World with Richard Parr. And even if you're not into swimming, we've got all other sports for you as well. Perhaps John Potter from the world of hockey. Perhaps Bodo Illgner, the former Football World Cup winner with Germany. Maybe David Campese from the rugby world. It is all on the show. Go back and listen to it on richardparr.net. Alright, that's it for this week's show. Stay tuned for next week's podcast next Wednesday on iTunes and on Stitcher. I'll speak to you then. Have a great week. Bye.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.